Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Ordinary Dads podcast, or as we like to call it, TODcast, because, TOD, for short of, the Ordinary Dad. Yeah, so TODcast! For today's episode, we want to welcome James Ng and Ling, who have been married for 11 years and have... How many kids do you guys have?
Four kids.
Four kids, woohoo! Welcome guys, welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you for coming here to chat with us today. So the reason why we're doing today's podcast, because one of the things that I found out on my personal stay-home dad journey is how quickly you drift, away from your spouse, and how easy for tension to really build up as you are navigating this whole journey. So I came to this conclusion actually that one of the very critical things that must happen for me to be a better father is to first be a good husband. Yeah. So I'm still on this journey. I get it wrong most times, by the way, but I hope to chat with you guys more about this. And so, more questions that will be coming up will be things like, with kids taking up so much time, how does one set a time for his or her spouse? What happens when you disagree with your parenting styles? Why is it even important to put our relationships with our spouses first, even before our relationship with our children? So I don't have all the answers, so that's why I'm hoping that my friends, James and Ling, will help me out with this. So guys, when I met you guys last year, I didn't tell you this, but I thought that there was something about you guys, by the way. Yeah, I think as a couple, you were just so aligned, and there's a certain peace and calmness that emanates from the both of you as one, and so I thought maybe I should dig a little bit deeper, find out more a little bit about your relationship, how are things, like when you guys have to resolve. I'm sure you have disagreements. Yeah. Yep. Now, here's the caveat. I know you guys are going to be, saying this. I'm going to say for you first. I think, in this podcast series, we are no experts on the topics that we're discussing. But what we bring with us are stories and experiences. And I think what works for our guest on this series might not work for others. And that is perfectly fine. Now, the value is in the tumbling through. The value is in, listening to each other's stories and to picking out stuff which you feel are very relevant to you. Now, before we continue, I thought we we're going to do something a bit different. Usually we get the guests to introduce themselves. But since, you guys are married for 11 years, this time I'm going to have fun with it. I thought you guys could introduce each other.
I always say ladies first.
I knew that was coming, by the way. Yeah.
James is somebody who loves very well. He's very attentive, both to me, to his parents, to the household, to the kids. He also has an appetite for the unknown.
Wow.
So he's somebody who's really ready to take the plunge into something that is not mapped out.
Wow.
Yeah. So I would say that probably defines how he goes about his day.
James.
Okay. My chance to introduce my wife. What I love about her is that it's unusual for people to recognize that she's sort of a full-time stay-home mom because we've been volunteering in different spaces, and when we come into a large group of people, she is able to hold her own, able to lead people, able to function at a very high level that I think surprises people that she's a stay-home mom. I think what comes to mind was in 2019 when we took part in the Citizens panel on work-life harmony. She was basically helping to facilitate things, and after those, I think 3 or 4 sessions together, somebody asked her, Ling, actually, what do you do outside? And she said, I'm a stay-home mom. And they were like, wow. So, Ling, somebody who's really talented in many ways, somebody I really respect. And I think somebody who's been a great partner in this entire journey of raising a family and doing it together. And I think people underestimate what's required of a stay-home mom. It's stretched her in many ways. I mean, she's really talented to begin with, but when you need to run a home with 4 kids, you're really running a small business, if you ask me.
You are.
It's like you make 4 people and then you call them your team. Then you become the team leader.
Yeah. And then you play psychologist, you play doctor, you play,
early childhood educator.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Also, I really like the way you introduce each other, by the way. I mean, usually people will go like, oh, this is what this person does. This is what this person does. But you guys speak into the values that you appreciate to one another. Yeah. And I'm just calling that out because it's what I'm learning. Yeah. Yeah. I'm picking out that the both of you are stay home. What's the arrangement like?
We are not 100% fully stay home.
Yeah.
So we always say that.
Yeah, 200% stay home.
maybe we should qualify to say that actually when you use the word stay home, right, most people imagine that you spend 100% of your time, your energy, focus on the family, right?
Yeah.
Whether your kids, your marketing, your laundry, you're a chef and all that stuff, right? So I think when he says we're not stay home, what he really means is I think between us there's an understanding that we made the joint decision years ago that I would stay home with the kids.
Okay.
And he would give just a bigger proportion of his time to the family as well. But if anything in the workspace came along that he felt like, I must do this is really good and this is really timely, then anytime he could tap out and say, okay, I'm going to take a couple of weeks or months to do this.
So I always say that the business that we engage in is a business of family. It's a family business, right? But so that's the focus and priority, and the paid professional work sort of supports what's going on in the family. I think for many people, when they make career choices, they're always thinking about the norms in the industry or the norms for the age in terms of what they should be doing.
Yeah.
So I think the considerations were just different. For us, it was always watching what is happening in the family front. How do we adjust? How do we respond to what is timely and immediate, whether it's with the kids or even with my dad, who was ill in one season. And so actually this whole so-called stay-home journey began with him.
I see.
He had a rare motor neuron disease.
Okay.
And at a point in time, I felt I should spend a bit more time with him. The doctors didn't know how long he had. They said it's such a rare kind of motor neuron disease that there's not enough data to tell you, would he have 6 months? Would he have the next 10 years? But I just felt that I wanted to be able to make good on whatever time I had with him. Even if he lived for another 10 years, if I were to dedicate, let's say, 6 months to a year of being more present with him, I wanted to be able to do that without any regret if I didn't. I was about to be confirmed for the work that I was in at that point in time. I just finished my 6-month probation, but I felt I wanted to be able to stay home. At that point in time, we were married and we had one child. My son was about 1.5 years, and we had just gotten our BTO. So there were all these different, I guess, moving parts in our lives. And I remember my dad looked at me and he said, son, that's actually quite irresponsible if you were to, stop your job and to spend more time with me. He said, please don't do this just because of me. But I said, Pa, I don't think I'm going to have opportunity like this. And I said, I'm happy to do it. Although initially he had reservations about me being unemployed, and because my wife was still working, she was doing part-time. And he said, finances, are you guys going to be okay? I said, yeah, I think we'll be all right. Learn to live within our means.
Yeah.
Maybe dip into our savings a little bit. But I said, I really want to spend a bit more time with you this season. And I think he appreciated it. Wow. And I'm glad I made that choice because actually 4 months later, he passed on. So
quite suddenly.
Yeah,
actually.
Nobody expected it.
Yep.
He passed away in the middle of the night. But I guess that got us to rethink, how we are going about our lives, because what next after he passed on? And I realized I was in probably the best position compared to my two brothers to be able to then journey with my mom to sort out my dad's belongings, his paperwork, and to just be present. So I think at every point in time, it was just what's next? What is timely for the family?
Okay.
And then we had our next
second
child.
one. That's right.
Yeah.
So a lot was unfolding in the family front.
Yeah.
Papa had passed on. Mom really needed help sorting out stuff. Our home had come. We needed to renovate. It was a conversation that would help us discover our ideas about what our home would be like. We had one toddler running around, and we were expecting a second. Yeah. So it wasn't really in a vacuum that he woke up one day to say, okay, I'm going to be a stay-home dad. But I think the heart behind it was that he just really wanted to be present. Because our energies are finite, our attention is finite, right? So then it's asking, what is timely now for me to do to give my energies to?
I think having conversations with a lot of seniors, in that sense, or people who were in the last season of their life, having these kind of conversations allowed us to appreciate that many people often the regret was that they didn't spend more time with the kids when the kids were young. Many of them had poured themselves into their professional work. And then by the time they wanted to spend more time with family, they realized, my kids are grown. They don't really have time for me so much. And I said, we're hearing this recurring pattern, in the lives of so many people. If we are learning this from them, how will we live differently now that we are parents and we are faced with similar decisions that they made maybe 30, 40 years ago? Yeah, because, if you think about it, when you're in your deathbed, what do you look for? Yeah. What do you want to surround yourself with? Do people surround themselves with accolades, their certs, their medals, their achievements? Very rarely. People usually want to find their loved ones, right? People who are important to them, to surround them, to be there in their final moments. And I think that's something that I hope people will keep in mind as they journey through life. So I think that got us started in this whole process of exploring alternate kind of employment, doing freelance gig kind of work rather than just full-time employment with the typical office hours.
In our group, the Ordinary Dads, we have fathers, stay-home fathers who have different kind of arrangements for them to be more present for their children. What I was very encouraged by when I joined the group is that, there's no strict sense that you have to stay home, don't do anything. And, if you go into a freelance job, you technically not stay home, Yeah, I think it's about trying to make things work for the family because the objective and the heart behind being a stay-home parent is that you want to be present for your kids. And for some people, that means taking yourself out of a certain job, so that we can do that. Some people don't do full-time work at all. Some people still do gigs. Some people, both parents sometimes, take turns to do side jobs here and there. So I hope, people who are listening to this podcast will realize that, wait a minute, actually, don't have to be so
strict.
For lack of a better word, extreme about, stay home, that means, really, really cannot, Yeah, I think I was in that mindset. That's why I was very stressed for the first few months. Yeah. Like every time I got a call, hey, do you want to do this?
Should I do it? Should I not?
It's going to take 2 hours on a weekend. And then I'm like, cannot, I must stay home that now. Yeah. And I realized that came from a posture of pride. I started to put myself too much into that identity. Yeah. And that identity was an idolized one. And then I forget that actually, wait a minute. Take a step back. It's about your kids. It's about your family. It's not about you achieving something like having a check mark. Like in your journey of realizing that you were going to be more present for your family, the kids, and you guys doing it together, I'm picking out that there were going to be a lot of conversations. I'm asking from a communication perspective. How do you start these conversations? Because not all families, sometimes have a very easy time communicating certain things that are so in-depth,
So in my workplace, they were asking me, okay, you're going to get confirmed in your job. Do you want a permanent position?
Yeah.
And so we had a conversation and I told her, I said, I felt like I should spend more time with my dad. She had some concerns, obviously, about me taking a break and not being in employment. So you should share that.
Yeah, so my own family of origin, so I come from a very humble, traditional Chinese family. My parents worked they both worked. And their sort of philosophy towards money was earn all you can, spend what you need, and then save what you can. And the savings is always for a rainy day. So that was the mindset that I was bringing in to our relationship. We had been married maybe 4 years then. Yeah, so we were at a point where I was just looking at the numbers and I thought, okay, it'd be nice if he could tell me how long he intends for the break to be. And
she asked, is it going to be 3 months, 6 months, a year?
Yeah, but how does anybody answer something like that, right?
Right.
I mean, so really he framed it as whatever time it took to finish the work that he had on his heart.
Wow.
And when I heard this and I thought, okay, you can't put a value to that. You can't put a monetary value to that. His desire is to spend time with his father, right? And I said, okay, I just need some space to sort of sort myself out. But I don't really need very much more information from you. And I felt maybe that was my release. I was releasing him to say, you're not responsible for how I think. I now need to revisit my own values and ask how that squares up with yours, and what it means if we both carried that value into our home. Because I mean, as one generation loves, then the next generation learns, right? So I was seeing that he really wanted to love his father, and here I was looking at a little boy running around our house. This is our son, 1.5. I thought that there is something precious that can transact or can transcend. Yeah. So that money and all that, then maybe then this money thing takes a secondary position lah.
Okay.
Yeah. Because the reality is, I realized that if I looked inside, I know that I would never have enough. I can have 50,000, I can have 100,000. I can say, oh, that's enough for now. But what if my child falls sick? What if we need a new car? What if we this and that and this and that and this and that, right? So the amount of savings that I thought we needed was always a moving goalpost.
I see. Wow.
And that was also revealing for myself to know that, oh, okay. So actually I think my security is in having the money. I mean, nothing predominantly wrong with that. I think that's how my parents raised us. Yeah. So I'm not saying you should not have any savings, but it's good. But then I realized that I may never attain what I want.
I think I was asking, like, where is our security, right? Is it in savings or in a particular kind of asset versus it's your security in something that's larger, or in let's say in the relationship or in the person, recognizing that we can get through the adversity or the challenges together.
As a family.
Yeah.
That's the thing I'm realizing also about marriage. You start communicating your values. You start, internalizing each other's values, and you start having that discussion about, okay, wait, where am I coming from? And where are you coming from? And I think it makes you a person that grows, and both of you grow together. And I think that's something that's beautiful, and what marriage, kind of like brings out.
Early in the marriage or in the relationship, she used to ask me, she said, do you have the gift of voluntary poverty? Because she would see me be willing to give away money or whatever I had when I saw there was a greater need elsewhere. Yeah. And she used to, I guess, when you're not married and you're just dating, it's okay because you're watching an individual's life and you're like, okay, that's their money, and however they want to deal with it, that's up to them. But she realized as we are working towards marriage, obviously, whatever finances we had will now be shared, and she was obviously concerned, how is this guy going to be dealing with the money that we have, right? And if he's going to be continually giving it away. And I said, I think in my life, I have come to appreciate what we have and to realize that actually many other people live with far less. And if there's a way to be able to share it and to be giving it to needs that are significant and relevant and timely, then we should think about that. Because I think in my own life, I've seen the providence, I guess, of God to get me through different challenging circumstances. And I said, I think I know him well enough to be able to say that, okay, I do not need to try to secure my own future or my own finances. I mean, we work hard. It's not we sit back and we do nothing, but I'm not worried about all the what ifs, because there's no end in a sense to all the potential needs that whether we could have or our kids could have. But we try to be responsible, and then we try to provide as best we can. But where we see that we actually have a lot more buffer or a lot more excess than other people, how can we be giving? So it's quite amazing when you talked about the sharing of values, and in marriage, the ability to influence each other. I think that's been quite true. I've really been thankful that she's been open to me not being in typical full-time work. A lot of my friends ask me, you mean your wife allows you to do this? Like for you to not be holding down a regular job? And I've seen her tolerance for like how much reserves we need to have in a bank account change drastically. Like these days, she's not fixated, on a certain amount. And there are times where I've seen a bank balance drop to quite a low amount, and I'll turn to her and say, dear, are you okay? where we're at.
Yeah, so I think in the early years,
She would have more conversations.
I would have more conversations at his invitation because I don't think I picked up like resolution from my own family. So typical Chinese family. So you either sweep it under the carpet, or you just pretend it didn't happen.
Yeah.
So I never really knew how to raise an issue, and then with the goal of resolving it. My examples around me were either passive aggressive or like complete shutdown, right? So in the earlier years, when the bank account came down to like a lower amount, I think I would give out like a vibe at home. And so I said earlier that I introduced him as somebody who loves really well. He's really attentive. So he would then sort of cajole me and invite me into a conversation. And it's not easy, I think, to sort of calm a woman's vibe and draw her into conversation. So but we've grown from that.
How did you start and invite her into the conversation? I really like how you put it that way, but by the way, inviting you into the conversation. Because I think my own experience is, hey, why you don't want to talk to me? Can you talk to me now? I want to resolve this now. It's a very, I'm generalizing here, but it's a very guy thing, right?
I think it's always when you sense these vibes, you ask, dear, like, would you like to, you'll find a quiet time that we have where there's space of heart, because it's very hard to address these deeper issues if you're tired or like if you are rushed.
True.
So it's figuring out the right time to have these conversations, and then it's creating just that space, right, to allow her to, is there anything that you want to talk about, or is there I sense, I'll tell her, I sense that you're getting a bit edgy and like there's something that is bothering you, but you haven't really raised it. So just creating a space and allowing her, if I felt there was a need to talk about it specifically, I said, like, have you seen the bank balance recently? And like, is there?
So you would have sensed what the issue is about.
So it depends on if I wanted to just create a space and allow her to raise whatever she wanted to, versus I felt like it was this issue around finances and savings that needed to be addressed, and just putting it on the table and say, like, if you would like to address this, let's talk about it.
Yeah, and on my end, I think I have to remember not to use the nothing is wrong tone, right? Because I know on a cerebral level that he's inviting me into a conversation. So I guess it's a lot of coaching myself.
I see. Okay.
Which happens a lot these days because I'm parenting myself as I parent my kids.
Wow.
As well. We can talk about that a little bit more later, but and when he says, I sense that you are edgy, or that I can hear you stomping around the house again, like what's happening, right? And I will go, you know what? You're right. And I think that's the first step of acknowledging that actually, there's something I'm quite vexed about, huh? So the conversations were not easy, but they were very necessary. I think if he had not initiated them, I'm pretty sure I would just have let it simmer, and then it would have come out in an uglier manner at some point.
Can imagine.
Yeah, because what do you fight about most of the time? You fight about chores, you fight about parenting styles, and you fight about money. These are the top 3 things that people cannot agree on in a marriage.
How long are the conversations usually?
I think it ranges depending on when was the last time it was addressed, and like where we are in the journey of that topic.
It's like how much backlog there is to clear,
Because I think the early years, conversations around finances were more difficult to have because
more touchy. I was more touchy for sure.
Okay.
You're trying to understand the other person, the mindset.
Yeah.
And it takes time to invite the person into your own experiences, into your own understanding of a topic like finances, as to why you're approaching it in a particular way, right? Because to the other person who's not been on that journey, it could be new, it doesn't make sense, it doesn't resonate with them. But through greater dialogue, and where the other person sort of is then able to see that it's not an illogical kind of course of action that you're taking, but you are where you are today because of these experiences or because of this knowledge that you have about something, that then, okay, they become more open to it. They're willing to explore, to try, to test it for a bit. And I think as she has seen, I guess, the so-called timeliness of provision, like, so it could be paid work. So although we're not doing regular work where there's stable kind of like income, but where she's seen, okay, like if you look at a trend over a number of years, although there are fluctuations, but it sort of stabilizes and there's sort of some kind of equilibrium and some kind of confidence in the fact that there will be sufficient.
Wow.
Yeah, so I think that helps.
No, I think the other thing I really appreciated about him is that, so our perception sometimes is our reality, right? Because how you your perception is a lens that you view your reality from. So then your perception tells your brain that, okay, this is the reality. But I think when we speak on issues that we don't agree on, I understand that my perception or my reality does not negate his reality.
Wow.
Because we are two people that came from two very different streams, and we are coming together to build a life. And just by sheer fact that we've spent so much more time apart, decades with our own families, right, and coming together, then we're gonna need to take time and understanding to come together. Yeah. So I don't think in our conversation we ever negated the other person's reality and say, oh no, you're being silly, or you know. Yeah. So this is his reality, this is my reality. We are looking at the same thing, and we could both be right.
Right.
Because there are different ways to live, and we're just trying to come to a common space or common ground here.
The Ordinary Dads is a grown-up initiative that exists to help other stay-home dads on their parenting journeys, and this podcast can only be made possible by the generous support from Miles and More, our production sponsor. A link to their work is in the show notes, so do check these awesome guys out. We want to also take this time to thank Common Ground Civic Centre for supporting the Ordinary Dads with a space for stay-home dads to gather, share stories, and find comfort in each other's experiences. At Common Ground Civic Centre, people gather to learn new skills, collaborate, and share insights with one another. So I want to maybe move on to ask you guys about parenting styles. Have you guys, disagreed on your parenting styles before?
In terms of how to deal specifically with our kids, and especially with each child being a bit different, I think we've had to ask that question, how do we respond? And as they grow in terms of their age and maturity and the different kind of issues that they're facing. So maybe we just highlight the most recent one. So our eldest, our son, is now in P3. It is a jump between P2, P1, P2, and what goes on in P3. I guess the approach, who should really take the lead in figuring out these changes in terms of the workload, planning, revision, to prepare for, let's say, these weighted assessments that our son is now taking. So Siling's been the primary one focusing on the education portion in terms of reading, in terms of homework, in terms of helping them understand the content. So she's, I guess, more diligent in wanting to structure things. I guess as an adult, you're able to see what needs to be done, and then you break it down into smaller tasks, and then you're trying to help the child manage on a day-to-day basis. If you need to cover all this material, let's not overwhelm you just before, the day or the week before, but how do you start doing it bit by bit in the lead up? And I could tell my son obviously was
he's quite a free-spirited guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Free flow, okay, I feel like doing this today, let's do it. Oh no, I want to be playing. I'm glad she's very structured in her approach, but obviously he's coming from a very different angle, and I think it frustrates him that Mama is so
uptight. Let me help you with the word uptight.
James is like trying to find the right word.
Well, I didn't say she, but I mean, I understand her heart, right? She's trying to help. But I said sometimes it's important to let the child decide for himself, and even if it's going to be disastrous, so to speak, right? If it's going to be painful or if he's going to fail, I'd rather him fail when he's like young, and in the small things. Because if you don't allow him to make some decisions and live with the consequences, then he's always going to feel like, I've just been following what Papa Mama says, right? I just do. But you want him to think, you want him to make choices. So sometimes she'll be a bit more directive and says, son, today you need to finish this before you go and play. And I could tell by look on his face, like he's like, I just want to play. I'm gonna do this like later on. And so like I'll look at her and say, just let him do what he wants to do. Tell him this is your recommendation, but let him decide, And then sometimes she's like, no, you just gotta tell him that this is what he needs to do. Don't give him a choice.
So I think I think I was noticing that actually, okay, my own take lah. From P2 to P3, I think we're asking a lot of a child. The executive functions that are required of the child is really lacking at this stage. You're saying that the child needs like an ability or to remember, to recall things, to structure his time. And I think I don't know many 9-year-olds who can do that. Okay, yeah. And I see where he's coming from. I totally agree that the child needs to have a say in his day, and he needs to have the space to fail and then to get up. But one of the big differences that I noticed between parenting our oldest and our second one is that my second one often needs technical help. She does not need any emotional help. My first one needs almost no technical help. He just needs emotional help. And so my reading of the situation is that if he falls and he fails and he doesn't do well, it's going to take a lot more on my part and his part to get up. So as much as I can, I try to minimize the fall. You can still fall, but instead of breaking a leg, you can just bruise your knee. It's okay. We can get up. And then when you grow from each bruise, then hopefully you learn lah. Yeah. So I think that's my general understanding of who our eldest is. Yeah. So we came to a common ground again. We said, okay, so I printed out something that was like a week planner.
Okay.
Then he wrote out a list of everything he needed to do.
It's your son wrote out.
Yeah, I asked him to write out.
Okay.
Yeah. And he knows how to portion work in terms of like time.
Okay.
So he knows, okay, this will take 4 parts, this will take 1 part. So I asked him to fit everything in a week. And then he realized that whatever he doesn't do on this day, if he chooses to play, will spill over into the other day. So when there was a visual reminder, I had to speak less. I just had to speak less. Yeah. And there were times we let him fail. So sometimes the teacher assigns work on a Friday and it's due like in a week's time, right? So he knows and I know, but I don't say anything. And then he picks it up on Thursday and he's like half gonna cry because he realizes that it cannot be finished in one sitting. So then I say, then you just go back and you just say, I'm sorry, I need more time. I'll hand it out on Monday. Yeah. So in times like this, then I've let it slide. Yeah.
But it was nice that you guys, still had the conversations and then you knew where he was coming from and then you also,
Yes, but it also premised that he was around, you see. So he was around to witness like an escalation between me and my son. And then he stepped in to help.
Yeah.
And then at some point I didn't want to back off. So we had to talk because there was an escalation.
Okay.
I mean, not in terms of throwing things lah, but still tensions were high, emotions were running. Yeah.
Every kid is different. And like you said, your youngest and your oldest and your 4 kids, right? You seem to have a read on your kids. And one of the things I'm realizing now as a stay-home dad is that I'm starting to know how to read my kids. And the only reason why that can happen is because I spend more time, intentional time with them, versus in confession time. I would have been so into my work last time and not being present with them. And I thought every kid is the same, you just have to apply ABC and then they can listen. But no, the way to deal with my eldest is now very different from the way to deal with my youngest. Yeah. And so I think, whether or not you're working, to me, what I am learning is that you have to make that intentional time with your kids as well, so that you are able to also read into what works for them and what doesn't work for them. Yeah, and so important. So you have 4 kids. How do you make time for each other?
I think it's changed over the years.
Yeah.
The way that we spend time.
Yeah.
It's very different when you have 1 it's very easy to park a kid with like your parents or
Exactly.
somebody.
Yeah.
And then even when you're 2, I think all the way up to when we had 3, it was possible to head off for like a quick date night. So we used to be able to do that.
But
wasn't
even the
a
day
long-
night was just 2 hours.
Yeah,
It's
just 2
like-
hours. It's not a long dinner, but at least you get time with each other and to be able to enjoy something that maybe the kids might not want to eat. Yeah. Whether it's spicy food or whether it's at a nicer restaurant or something. Yeah. But yeah, this season with 4, I'll be honest, it has been challenging
Yep.
Okay.
because it's very rare that you can offload all 4 at a particular location.
And our kids are all very high energy, so they don't need a lot of sleep. Yeah. So we've had to find creative ways. We just found time to see each other, right? This was during like a lull. I just assigned work to the older 2, and then I parked the other 2 who was napping with my parents. Everybody's in one house. I bought lunch. I agreed to buy dinner. so then, I mean, we offloaded their cooking, so they were just caring for our kids.
A lot of the time that we spend actually, maybe we're atypical as a couple where we spend time by doing things together. Like, so there's a lot of house related, whether chores, admin, doing the dishes, doing the laundry, but it's in doing these things together that we get to chat. You know, we will be like reflecting on our day or like something that's happened, and then the relating takes place in those. So actually we spend a lot of time in the kitchen because there's dishes to wash, there's laundry to do, there's things that you're preparing for the next day. But also we would learn to create supper in the kitchen, right? So rather than head out, so we at home, finally when the kids are in bed and the house is quiet, then we get to decide, oh, okay, hey, what do you want to have for supper? Then we'll like raid the fridge or like put something together.
It could just be instant noodles.
Something similar to that. Being willing to flow with the different seasons and then making the best out of the context and what we need to do, and then still prioritize, I think, the relationship. Obviously, there are days where you're just so tired that you don't get the kind of like relational time, but I think we always try to find ways to ensure that that doesn't happen over like a
prolonged period.
Extended period.
Yeah.
I see.
Because it's important to know what's going on with each other, I think. And then sometimes if I'm out for work during a particular season, she would come and fill me in with what's been happening with the kids or what they've been telling her when they come back from school on the afternoon. So I think that helps me like catch up and stay up to date with where they are and what's happening. Yeah.
What I'm hearing also is to not despise the ordinary moments. And so ironic that, you know, that group that we are attending is the Ordinary Dad. Yeah, I think we tend to think of even date nights as like, oh, it has to be this grand thing, has to be a very set structure. But actually in small ordinary moments like what you're mentioning, making supper together, can actually be beautiful moments where you spend time. And if not even, I won't say better, but as important. Or actually, yeah, more important. I can have like date nights, you know, bring to expensive restaurants and all that. But if I miss out on those more ordinary moments, something might be lacking also. Yeah. So that's wonderful to hear. Were there moments where one kid is closer to one of you, and do you all have to deal with that?
All the time, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, different seasons. So actually you asked about roles that we play. I look to him to regulate aggression and excitement. He does
Okay.
that for the kids.
Yeah.
Because in the rough housing, in the sports, in the
Yeah.
dunking them in the pool,
Yeah.
I mean, that's what he does for them. It looks like he's just having fun in the pool, but
Yeah.
I see it as he's just helping them regulate aggression.
Yeah. Actually,
And
that's a good
excitement,
point.
yeah.
Yeah. So it's
Because-
not just like, oh, I'm just a fun guy. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's what fathers do, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they climb and you say, okay, you know, just watch your front. The mothers will say, hey, don't climb so high.
So I think when you ask about the kids gravitating towards
Yeah.
either parent, yeah, I'll be honest. In the early years, it is
It's
difficult
very,
because
really, really difficult for him.
obviously because she's breastfeeding them and there's a lot of contact time and nurturing and them feeling close. Obviously, when they're crying and let's say I pick them up and they're like, one more.
Now, he calls himself the second grade parent.
Oh, really?
You feel like you're the, you don't quite make the cut or like you're not wanted.
Oh,
but
yes.
you try not to take it personally because you understand, you recognize that the familiarity, the comfort, the emotions that they have. is best soothed by the mother at that point in time.
And it's interesting, right? He just described his own coaching like conversation that he has internally.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, because you, rather than
because the kid is not doing purposely
Yeah,
to
they're not
frustrate
doing-
you.
yeah, exactly.
They're not like, okay, my goal is to frustrate my father. They're not like that.
But and then I guess reading up and recognizing at the different ages, the ability to play, the ability to engage. Like she says, at a certain point in time, the kids start looking towards the father. The father's like the hero. And obviously that's a fun state for me to be in, because they look to the father as a strong character in their life who they turn to for many things. And I think one thing to enjoy each season of like the kid's journey or what it is. And then in these years with like the ones in primary school, they obviously spend more time with her because they're doing music, they're doing the reading, the schoolwork. So I've taken a bit more time with like the third one who is turning 4 this year. So we're trying to do a bit more play and just whether they read or just be coloring, like just different things that are where they're at, right?
But our 4-year-old put it quite aptly that day. So he offered to nap with the 4-year-old. And then she said, no, mama's for napping, papa's for playing.
Wow. It takes a village to raise a child, but I'm also realizing that it takes a village to sustain a marriage. Do you all agree? And do you all have mentors, people whom you go to? What's your take on that?
Yeah, for sure. We get a lot of help every day with our kids. The fact that we are here without a baby means somebody's taking my baby, right?
Yeah.
My 16-month-old is with my mom.
Yeah, my mom comes to stay with us 2 to 3 days a week.
That's right.
I see.
So it really helps.
Yeah. So a lot of inputs from different streams. Actually, we tend to see the people they interact with in schools as part of the village as well.
Oh, I see.
I mean, you can go to you can pick a good school to go to. But I think your reality comes down to the 5 to 10 people you interact with every day. So as far as we can, we try and have conversations, understand who they hang out with, really listen out to the comments that are coming back, things that they are reporting from school, and helping them strengthen some of that relationship as well. My son had a breakthrough recently. Somebody in school was sort of like being nasty to him, like trying to bully him, and
Because it's a new class.
Yeah,
when
it's
they
a
go
new
to
class.
P2 to P3, they reshuffle again, so it's all
Right.
largely new classmates.
Right.
So he's facing some challenges with
yeah,
one
and
of
this
his
guy is
classmates.
much bigger in size
Like
than
physically
him. Yeah,
bigger,
physically
okay.
bigger. Yeah, and so he came back. He was quite like troubled by it. We talked, we gave some suggestions, and then we found out that he tried one of the suggestions. So he went to the guy and he said, if you want to be friends, there's a different way to do it. We can just be friends. You don't have to do all these things to get my attention.
Basically,
and
the
the
guy
guy-
was irritating him
Yeah,
in many ways.
and the guy looked really surprised and said, "Oh, really?
Wow.
Okay." So it's also helping my son build his village, right?
Yeah.
Then we found out a week ago that this guy picked the same CCA as him, so they're now seeing each other with extended time after school as well. So I'm really happy that this was resolved before the CCA.
How did that conversation come about? Like, do your children voluntarily offer this kind of stories to you guys of what happens in school, or?
Yeah, we try and do the pickups. Either one of us will do the pickups, and that's when it comes out.
Because it's sort of fresh,
Yeah.
right? They're getting out of school. A lot of these
Pick up like
emotions.
as in when you fetch them.
Yeah, when you fetch them,
okay.
Yeah. So they unload all the verbal. Yeah.
Wow.
So we learn about these things.
I think in the community, before we had kids, we were hanging out with other couples who had 1 or 2 kids,
Yep.
and then we had opportunity to see what was coming up down the road.
That's right.
We would hear stories, we would observe how they respond and relate with the kids. And I think it's important because it's not like there's only one type of parenting technique or one way to deal, and your kids are going to be different from even your friends' kids, right? And the dynamic that
that's right.
exists, but it's building up, I think, a storehouse of knowledge and experiences that you can then draw upon as you continue your parenting journey. I think even in this ordinary dads group, just being able to hear the perspectives and the experiences of different dads has been very helpful, because you then realize everybody's situation is different, everybody's approach might be different, and they could all work, right? And it's not like you need to just, it's not that it's only one way, but it gives you that freedom, I guess, to explore and also figure out what works in your family context with the values that you have, with the faith that you have.
The other group of people that we rely on or we've benefited from is really the neighborhood. So because with 4 kids, it's really difficult on the afternoon to bring everybody out to a playground. So we rely on like the corridor play a lot.
Yes.
The kids will ask and say, yeah, go and knock on whoever's door. I think up to 1-2 levels up, there are different kids of different ages that they know their habits or their timetables. So they roughly know who's in and who's not in, where to borrow a bicycle if they need.
Oh, that's so lovely, the kampong spirit.
Yes, it's coming back.
Yes. Yeah, so I think at one point I relied on the 9-year-old to bring my 6-year-old down to like the playground. It gets really rowdy because sometimes we have secondary school kids. Okay. Where secondary school kids come and hang out and stuff like that. But I looked at the 9-year-old and we've interacted enough to know, I know that she's got a sense of responsibility. Her radar is generally quite sharp. And she's quite good for our 6-year-old. Our 6-year-old is very friendly, almost too friendly for one good. So she knows how to rein her in, so to speak. Yeah, so that's been really helpful.
I guess it's also empowerment to your kids to help them realize that, they can be responsible for certain things at that age as well.
Yes. So after that, then we've allowed our 6-year-old to bring the 4-year-old down.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so there's because she's seen how somebody helped her.
Yeah.
So she
sort
of
can
knows how
actually
to mirror
apply it
that.
after that.
Yeah.
It's really like handling your own business at home.
The little employees that you have.
Exactly. Yeah. So Ling, what advice do you have, or what words of encouragement do you have for other mothers out there?
I would say that to moms, in order to encourage your husbands, don't do the maternal gatekeeping thing.
What's that? What's the maternal gatekeeping thing?
So I use this phrase to describe women who sometimes think, ask you to do, also don't know how to do. Never mind, I do. We have maternal instincts. And sometimes we think, just because I've changed a diaper 200 times and you've only done it 10 times, I do it better than you.
Okay.
But I tend to think that, it's okay. If he's only changed it 10 times and he wants to tape it his way, then he just deals with the leak later. It's okay. It's not like a life and death thing, The boundary is not enforced by just the mom.
Right.
I think we need to let the fathers in. We need to let them try, and we need to not nag. And in that trying, they will find their own styles of doing it.
Right.
I mean, if he puts the baby to sleep, he does it very differently than if I were to put the baby to sleep. And because I
don't got the nipples to soothe the baby.
Our kids are dynamic. They're growing. They're people with personalities and preferences, right? And they can grow to understand that they're relating with somebody else, So I would say that, and I think celebrate the wins as well, the small wins.
Small wins
also.
also.
Hey, thanks for helping to put the baby to sleep, or thanks for noticing that I really needed help and coming before I asked. I think these are things that really help the men feel that they're seen.
Okay.
They're appreciated, and that they're needed.
James, what words of encouragement or advice do you have for fathers out there?
I think I'm encouraged by the changing landscape of fatherhood. I think these days you see a lot more younger fathers playing more involved roles with their kids. If I think back to my dad's generation, they see themselves primarily as breadwinners, so they're out there working. But I think these days, if you just walk around any like HDB estate or like in the malls, you see fathers like with the carriers, with the babies. So there is a growing community of, I think, fathers, not just the stay-home dads, but you see within the workplace, people are finding ways to have flexible work arrangements to allow fathers to be the ones to go pick up the kids, things like that. And I think even the conversations with young fathers, people are recognizing that it's becoming more the norm for fathers to play different kind of caregiving roles or take on different responsibilities with the kids. And I think there's something precious about fatherhood that changes a person. So in the workplace, we always think we are irreplaceable. Like you pour yourself into your work in a way that's everything that there is to life. But we forget that actually the place where you are irreplaceable is really in your home, in your marriage, and with your kids. The reality at work is that if they fire you or if you leave, they're just going to hire somebody else. They're going to hire somebody else. But in the home setting, if you're absent, you don't really have a replacement. For many of the dads that I talk to who choose to play a more involved role, it's actually been quite a transformative journey. And just to highlight, it actually makes you a better manager at work when you learn to be a good father. So there are some articles that I read which, in terms of empathy, in terms of hearing, in terms of learning how to nurture someone, being able to provide guidance, leadership, actually a lot of the skill sets that I think apparent, like whether for moms or dads, when you learn how to do that well with your kids, actually it's a transferable skill.
It is.
That you can bring to the workforce.
It is, yeah.
And then the other thing is that it doesn't need to be, what should I say? Sometimes parents feel like, oh, if I'm home, it's a lot of sacrifice. Or like if I spend time with my kids. But I think to be willing to think about it in terms of how can it be a life-giving process when I choose to be more involved in the home. It's not that I am becoming less of myself or I am giving up something, but you are growing in different ways, you are developing yourself, you are having opportunity to discover things about yourself, or even maybe bring some kind of closure or healing to childhood pains or challenges that we experience in our own life. Yeah, for fathers out there who are thinking about maybe playing a more involved role, I would say, yeah, do it. I'll be honest, it is challenging. It is painful at times. There are days where you ask, what am I doing?
I think because it's a very hidden season.
Yeah.
Right.
There's no applause. There's no...
Your children
no
are not
reason.
gonna give you like a 5-star rating or something,
Yeah.
Well done, you get a
Even if
promotion.
you get a 5-star rating, it's for 5 minutes, then you don't give them the Milo, then your rating drops.
So true, yeah.
Yeah, so I think the hidden season is difficult as a transition because all of us who are at work, you have teams, you have managers, you have mentors, you have people around you, you have pantry talk. When you end up staying home, you're just talking to yourself or you're narrating your thought process to your child who's learning and picking up language from you, right? But I think that what he's describing is like a hidden season.
Because a lot of it is repetitive, it's thankless,
Yep.
and it's often like mundane. Yeah. But I think that also...
I love the longing look in Josiah's eyes. He's like, oh, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Well, thank you for sharing all those gems. That was really, really meaningful and beautiful. And I think through your stories and your sharing, you're actually also shedding light on a lot of the things that parents face. And it is a hidden season, but thanks for doing this because you are unhiding the season, I guess. Yeah. So I hope people who are listening to this will recognize that they're not alone. Yeah. I like to use the podcast as kind of like a time capsule as well. So if you gotta say anything to your kids, all 4 of them, what would you say?
I would say to all four of them that we love you very much. And whatever happens, okay, you go for a second.
It's interesting that this season, my third, so our daughter, is listening to these audio stories, and it's about the parable of the lost son. Okay. And she's been asking to listen to it time and time again. And I asked her, I said, why do you want to keep listening to this particular story? She said, I love it. She says, I don't know, I just love it. And every time we play in the car, it's a reminder of the kind of unconditional love that a parent has. Because it talks about 2 sons, and the younger son basically asks the father for his inheritance. basically it's telling the dad, like, Dad, I wish you were dead. I just want my money and I'm going to go off and live the wild life, which he did. And then he came to a point where he squandered everything he had. And then he reached a point of realization that it was probably actually better to go back and work as one of the dad's hired hands, who were better off than where he was, facing like starvation and just a very difficult financial situation. And he had resolved in his heart that he would tell his dad, I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. But as he made his way home, from afar off, the father saw him coming. And the father said, wow, I see somebody coming down the road. I recognize that's my son. And the father chooses to run to the son, embrace him, and restored him as a son in the family, and threw a big celebration to celebrate his return. And the father basically said, my son who was dead is now alive and is worthy of celebration. And I think as I've been listening to this story over and over again the last couple of days, this is my heart for my kids, that in life, really, whatever happens, to know that there's always the ability to come home. Papa and Mama are here. We love you very much. It is this thing about unconditional love and acceptance. I think it's something that only parents can understand. And it's the desire to want to see them well, but even in the event that things in life don't go well, there's no need to run and hide, but there's always a place that will welcome and accept you, to help basically get you back on your feet and to allow you to find a safe place that will allow you to be restored. Yeah. So that's what I hope that they'll hear one day.
Yeah, so he shared pretty much what I wanted to say. I would have said, whatever happens, you can come home.
Wow.
Yeah. There's always a place.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, listeners, for spending this time with us. If you found this useful, drop us a shout out, so we'll be encouraged. Or better still, share this with friends and other parents whom you think will benefit from this story. Thank you so much again, James and Ling, for sharing your lives, your stories, and for spending this wonderful, precious time with us.
Thank you for having us.
It's a
Thank
privilege.
you. Till then, while parenting is anything but ordinary, the love, the care, the commitment of ordinary dads and parents, do wonders to this sometimes mundane and perplexing parenting journey. Just want to let everyone know that you're not alone, ordinary dads. So, see you guys soon.